Hey everyone, welcome to the Intelligent Conversations podcast, where we believe everyone has a form of intelligence that resides within them. Our goal is to encourage these types of conversations for our audience to listen to. Without further ado, welcome to the show. Hey everyone, this is your host, Josh Baker, with the Intelligent Conversations podcast. Today I have the privilege of speaking with David Page. He's the creator of Drive-Ins, Diners, and Dives. He also was a longtime journalist with ABC and NBC. He has since transitioned to food television and is writing the book Food Americana. I believe he's already written that. So, David, I looked at your profile on Podcast, and I noticed you had a section of interview questions there was one that kind of caught my eye, and that was, uh, I'm also just kind of dying to know the answer, and that's, why do Americans love fast food?
Well, we are a convenience, and by the way, thanks for having me. We're a convenience society. Everything has to be faster, quicker. Unlike Europeans, we don't see a whole lot of value in breaking to have a sit down lunch. On top of that, we've become kind of addicted to eating in our cars because back in the 50s, after World War II, when the majority of American society was feeling euphoric that we had expressed our American exceptionalism and we were riding on top of the world, the concept of newer, better, more modern was in vogue. And as President Eisenhower created the interstate highway system, which spurred many of us to get in our cars, our flashy, affordable cars, and drive all over the place as an increasing number of Americans moved to the suburbs and use their cars to get to and from work every day. The concept of driving through a place and getting some new kind of food after talking into some sort of speaker box all seemed very new and scientific and modern and exciting. And that was the beginning of our addiction, if you will. But there's something else, to use the word addiction, which is that fast food offers us a combination of food, of salt, sugar, and fat that scientists say we're kind of addicted to at this point. Whether it was by happenstance or if they're intentionally targeting us, doesn't matter. The fact is, it's what we want.
I think you bring up an excellent point. Obviously I'm a younger guy, and uh, I, I wouldn't be surprised, especially when there's this recent poll that came out and it said the generation that's coming up is like 80% of them are going to be eating only fast food and only through drive-ins, and that kind of like blew my mind a little bit. I was like, man, do people really not want to like sit down and have a meal? And I, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Like, would you say like obviously this is becoming more and more relevant, but the traditional American sit down TV dinners, are those kind of
Well, they're
just
gone, and they've
gone?
been gone unless you're watching old sitcoms. The sit down family dinner has been gone for a very long time. First of all, you have in most households two parents at work. So it's not like the stereotypical mom of the 50s is going to spend 3 hours in the afternoon making a pot roast. It's about convenience. And you talk about fast food. You also need to talk about, in that respect, convenience foods. Come home, defrost something, put something in the microwave. One way or another, it's still processed food. Now, interestingly enough, there has been a bit of good news to those like me who think we ought to be eating real food, which is the proliferation of these meal kit services. I think they're probably unduly expensive, and to many of us who like to cook, they seem kind of slap your forehead and say "duh." In that, instead of cutting open your cellophane packet of salt, I could probably put my own salt in. but they are providing a more convenient way for people to do some actual cooking at home, and that's a good thing. As for how much drive-through food the younger generation, I sound like an old guy. Get off my lawn, kids. We're all driving through things, and that has been exacerbated by the pandemic. One of the takeaways from the pandemic is the degree to which even restaurants that traditionally haven't used drive-in or delivery or curb service all relied on it, and still rely on it to some extent during the pandemic. And the experts I talk to say that's not going to go away. It'll reduce somewhat, but the fact is, you have any number of chain restaurant operators now coming up with architecturally new designs that have no interior space. They're drive-in only. You have better burger operations such as I want to get it right. I don't know if Five Guys is doing this, but the places that claim that they are better than fast food, that their hamburgers are higher quality, et cetera, et cetera, they had stayed away from drive-throughs because they need a certain amount of preparation time to make a burger from scratch. But they've been crunching the numbers and looking at operational changes, and the better burger segment is now starting to rely on drive-throughs. You've got well, Starbucks has some drive-throughs, and I understand they're adding more. It's That's the future. Now, does it mean we'll never go into restaurants again? Of course not. But it does mean that the trend, the wave, the preference for grabbing food and going, and thus the preference for food items that can be shoved into your face with one hand while driving, all of that will continue to increase in both popularity and availability.
I I think that is definitely true, and I mean, obviously, I mean, we can't dispute this. I think there's definitely correlation between. Would you say there's a correlation between, I would say, an obesity epidemic and the fast food restaurants as well?
Sure, but look, it's a very complicated subject. But of course, the and not just fast food restaurants, processed food of all sorts. I mean, look at Heinz ketchup and see where high fructose corn syrup is in the list of ingredients. It is sugar, salt, and fat. And it is also, I mean, it's not just calories in, it's increasing lack of calories out. I mean, we're all sitting in front of computer screens and calling that work.
That's true. I think that definitely affects. I mean, this is the first time in, I would say, the history of the world where people are like, you need to actually go outside and work out or go to a gym and work out. Like the gym business didn't exist prior to, I think you were saying 1945, like when World War II and all that was going on. I think it didn't exist, that like it wasn't as prevalent, I guess is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, look, there were always gyms, but the concept of gyms for everyone and it being normal and natural to say I'm going to get a workout was obviously it's obviously a relatively new phenomenon. I don't know, the 70s. I'm not an expert in that area. But then again, the 70s is 50 years ago. So uh, that is in the time frame of our increasing fascination with convenience food.
Yeah, I I almost want to. I'm gonna kind of shift gears here for a second. You were mentioning processed foods, and I remember seeing something where I think it was, I want to say it was in London, where this company is gonna do grocery stores where all they do is, it's kind of like Amazon where they package it all and then they ship it to your house. And I think you mentioned something like that where there's like you can actually prepare a meal from home because you're able to actually get all the ingredients and it's convenient. Do you think that,
Yeah, meal
yeah,
kits.
do you think that would I, is that like a good competitor with the big fast food chains like
No,
McDonald's.
nothing's a good competitor against chains with uh, millions of customers and relatively low prices. Is it available for those who want to use it? Yes. Might it nudge some people in the direction of better eating? Yes. Just as troublesome to me is the fact that America's taste in when it goes out where it wants to eat has completely gone to hell. And you drive into any small city and you're immediately driving down a road that is completely fast not fast chain restaurants like Chili's or Fridays, and choosing to eat there instead of at a mom and pop restaurant where the food has actually been made fresh for you by hand. That to me is a shame for any number of reasons, including the fact that what you're getting is often microwaved or boiled in a bag, and certainly highly processed. Which is not to say that if you eat at a mom and pop, you're not getting some processed food. I mean, every mom and pop, not every, most mom and pops get their staple food not from a local butcher, but from Cisco or US Foods, which are massive distributors of every kind of food on earth. And but I'd still like to have the man or woman behind the counter actually making it fresh for me to the extent that's possible.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I grew up in a home where my parents were very set on preparing a meal, but even then, I would say now they're heading in the direction of uh what is it? Like more naturally grown, like natural fed beef and like things like that. Are those better than, I mean, I think my audience would like to know, is it better than just regular beef, or is there any like I
Well, better for you, or better for the world. I mean, the issue about factory farming. Uh, I don't know that grass-fed beef is better for me than grain-fed beef. The fact of the matter is, having been raised in America, I still prefer the taste of grain-fed beef, but grass-fed beef is certainly a better way to treat the cows, and over time, much better for the environment than the way most beef farming is done. So I'd certainly vote for that for any number of reasons. I mean, the taste of beef is interestingly an acquired concept. Uh, Beef that is grown naturally and just cut into a hunk is not necessarily considered the greatest beef on earth. When you go to a high end steakhouse, what you're getting at the very top end, and the reason it tastes so good, is beef that's basically been intentionally allowed to rot for a while. It's called dry aging, and as the beef breaks down, the taste improves. Now, done wrong, it'll get you very sick. Done right, it's wonderful. On the other hand, Wagyu beef, the Japanese or Kobe beef, call it what you want, is prized, in my view, by a lot of people who drown when it rains because their noses are up in the air. I don't like the taste of Wagyu beef. I think it's too fatty. And when it's served in America, it's generally served as a steak, which is just too much and too intense. In Japan, it tends to be very thinly sliced and quickly cooked on a heated rock, which, if you're going to eat Wagyu, is the way to do it.
Man, you mentioned Japanese. I guess beef is kind of what I'm getting here. Would you say that America's kind of? I mean, we're, I guess, in a way developing our own culture of food, but would you say we've kind of lost our way? Because we've had, I mean, we're blessed to have multiple ethnicities and multiple like people from different backgrounds that can bring different foods from where they came from. Would you say that's kind of dying out as well?
No, I think American cuisine, by definition, and this is the essence of my book, Food Americana. American cuisine is a melange of dishes from other countries and cultures that we adopted in most cases along with immigrants, and that we then evolved and modified and changed to suit our tastes or the availability of ingredients here. I don't know what food culture will be the next one to be so broadly embraced that it becomes part of American cuisine. Look at sushi. I mean, sushi originally the predecessor of sushi was actually Chinese, but sushi as we know it was Japanese. When sushi came to the United States in the late 50s and early 60s, it was something for Japanese businessmen to eat, having been posted generally in Los Angeles by their companies. When it was embraced by the glitterati in Los Angeles, movie stars and such, it became hip. But for it to travel across the country and become so prevalent that you can get it in a drugstore, and I now believe it to truly be part of American cuisine, it changed. It was modified to be something that most Americans want to eat, to the extent that what was generally a simple presentation in Japan, especially the sushi rolls, in the United States is now supersized, covered with all sorts of sauces. In the case of some places, the whole roll is even fried. I focus on a sushi bar in a gas station in Oklahoma where they drop the whole roll into the deep fryer. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not Japanese sushi. It's Japanese American sushi, and it's those sorts of modifications to foods from elsewhere that create a cuisine of our own.
I think I really like what you said. I think in a way that if you bring foods here into America, then it kind of gives us our own identity of what food is. And I mean, I'm going to kind of ask you something here, and that's uh, out outside the U.S. I mean, I haven't traveled outside. I mean, you seem like a guy that's been outside the U.S. You've traveled and had different types of food from different cultures. Would you say that they almost look at American culture and it's just like the best thing you can get there is burgers, fries, pizza, like the typical fatty
Well,
foods?
yeah, look, there is a general perception elsewhere in the world that American food is fast food. On the other hand, while people may look down their noses at it, uh, that doesn't stop them from patronizing the Burger King on the Champs Elysees, or when I lived in Budapest, the McDonald's that opened there. It's sort of a bifurcated view. On the one hand, there's a lot of international condescension toward American food. On the other hand, on Christmas in Japan, it's become a tradition to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken. So, uh,
What?
you know, yeah, Kentucky Fried Chicken has had spectacular success in Japan, and somehow they created a Christmas tradition of eating KFC on. I'm not sure if it's Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, and remember, Christmas isn't a holiday for the vast majority of people in Japan, but it's just become kind of a cool thing to do.
Man, I didn't know that. That's actually cool that they eat chicken either Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. I had no idea. Uh,
Yeah, but it's got to be Kentucky Fried
yeah.
Chicken. It's got to be KFC, which has a substantial brand presence in Japan, as do most of our fast food chain restaurants.
So, I mean, as we're mentioning here, KFC. I mean, now I'm kind of interested. Would you say there's any? I mean, I can't think of any, but are there any chains that started outside of the U.S. that I would? I mean, I'm not too familiar in this area, but
Well, not that you would probably notice, but there's one. and I'm going to butcher the name. I think it's Bonchon. That is a Korean fried chicken chain that is growing quite quickly in the United States. There are some others, but nothing that has any of the mass of an American fast food chain.
I'm just gonna kind of follow up with that. Why do you think it's like that? Why do you think we can't? Because I feel like you said that we can get McDonald's into other countries. I think pretty well, but
Well, because Americans. There's a food business analyst named David Portalatin who explained to me Americans like to try new things if they've already had a version of it. The fact is, as a culture, we're not particularly adventurous. I think we're getting a little more so, but Americans generally, painting with a very broad brush, are uh, not open to massive exploration in the food area. Certainly, there are millions of people who are. It's why regional cuisines, such as a dish from Mexico called birria de res, which is a spicy beef stew that has never been part of Mexican American cuisine because it came from elsewhere in Mexico. Americans are increasingly trying things like that, but by and large, I think it's fair to say, again, painting with a broad brush, that the big chunk of the American market knows what it wants and it changes its tastes very slowly.
man, that's actually an interesting point because I would say my whole life I've been like kind of raised like the reason why America is like done what it's done so far is because like when people moved over here like uh I can't remember when the Mayflower. I know I totally got my history wrong there, but when that came over and people started coming over, they had a little bit of risk in them. But now we're to a point where it's like,
Oh, though
I don't know if I trust.
obviously, if you're going to leave your homeland for religious freedom, yeah, you're a risk taker. But there were other reasons. But look, I- I'll just stand by this statement. Most of America is not looking for major exploration in its daily food intake.
Huh. That's an interesting point. I I really like that. I mean, I like to think that I tried new foods, but in a way, I
Well,
think you're
how do
right.
you feel about some artery and some duck blood and some tendon and some tripe?
I guess you made a point there. I would definitely question myself.
Well, the point is that is one form of Chinese food as eaten in China that I explored at a large food hall in Queens in New York that targets as its customers not Americans looking for Chinese American food, but Chinese immigrants looking for the foods they can get back home. And by the way, those items, most of them together in a dish called dry pot, the duck blood served on the side, as kind of looks like a piece of liverwurst. The food was fantastic, but I don't think you're going to get most Americans to try
Yeah,
it.
I think you're definitely right. Uh, I mean I don't know if you know this, but I live here in Utah, and there's a population. I mean, you're probably familiar. There's a lot of people from that are Mormons here, and they send out missionaries to go travel the world and then like preach whatever. And then
Yeah, I have some close friends who are from Utah who are Mormon and who have discussed with me their
yeah, okay,
mission.
so you know what I'm talking about, but they've had to go out, and one of the things they tell you is to uh you're just supposed to be polite, and then whatever, the potential members feed you, you just eat. And I've heard a lot of people come back from those experiences and they're like, there was some things that I was definitely questioning, but it was just like, man, that was actually kind of good, and I've never been exposed to that. And I kind of want to ask a question here that I think uh would you say Americans aren't, because most people I've talked to when they first get out, they try a new like culture, new diet, they get sick within the first week. Would Is there something that's playing a role there where we're just not used to that type of food?
I I I have a hard time with that. I can only speak to my own experience, which is I was covering international events in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East for, I don't know, 6 years. I got sick twice, and I know it was some street food that I wasn't smart, and I ate in places with bad water supplies. And when I say street food, it wasn't cooked, it was like a bean dish or something. And my rule for street food is it's the best stuff to eat as long as you see it cooked in front of
Yeah.
because heat, the fire kills anything, as opposed to, you can be careful as hell and then order a salad in a place where the water is questionable and the lettuce has been washed in the water and you're down for the count. I mean, we're not talking about foreign versus American, we're talking about third world versus first world in terms of sanitation. It isn't the food; it's the availability of clean water that is the culprit in most cases.
Okay, so if I'm just getting this right, you're saying that water does play a pretty big role in the
Well,
preparation
sure,
of food.
but not in France or Italy or Greece. I mean, yeah, if you're in Somalia, where it's very difficult to get clean water, then I would stay away from anything that was um, touched by water and wasn't then cooked. On the other hand, cooking kills virtually everything. So there you go. Um, Look, food internationally, food is the gateway to every culture. There is nothing more glorious than going to a place and being introduced to cuisine you've never had. I mean, I had Ethiopian pancakes, which, I mean, you use the pancake like a tortilla to pick up very spicy meat. I had Ethiopian pancakes for the first time in my life in Ethiopia, and it just blew my mind. The real is the wrong word. The versions of food as eaten in their home countries, especially foods you may not have had before, will just put you on your ass with happiness.
Yeah, I I definitely agree with that. I mean, I've only traveled here within the US. I'm trying to, explore more and get out. But I just recently went to Tennessee, and they're more famous. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. They're more famous for their chicken and uh their
Well,
spicy chicken. And
there's Nashville hot chicken, and there's also barbecue in Memphis.
yeah, I had both of those. It was, oh man, dude. I was like, man, this is what I'm missing out on. Like, I want to expose myself to more. It's like, what would you say? How would we motivate people to actually go out and try different foods?
Well, it's hard in an era of COVID to convince people to do a whole lot of traveling. Um, all I would say is if you are someplace, try it. I mean, a couple years ago, my wife and I were in Madrid around this time of year. We actually drove up and down the coast of Spain, but we were in Madrid. No, we were in Valencia, and we were at the big central market, which is a huge outdoor food hall. And I saw something I couldn't figure out, and I asked what that was. I was looking, and the guy told me it was barnacles. Now I think of barnacles as the junk that has to be pried off the hulls of boats. But the gentleman behind the counter explained to me, yeah, that's what it is, but it's edible. It is a kind of shellfish. So we ordered barnacles, and they look kind of disgusting. They're fantastic. It's You crack them open, and they're small, so you got to work for the meat, but they taste like crab. They're incredible. Now, you got a choice when someone tells you those are barnacles. You can try them or you can't. I strongly advise you to try them.
But yeah, man, now I'm kind of getting hungry. I want to go try some. I mean, I
Oh, there is nothing like a central market food hall in, well, my personal favorite is Spain, but Spain, Italy, rural France. that we walked around the Valencia market for hours, and we'd stop here and have a little jamon iberico, which is that incredible Spanish ham that the really good stuff comes from boars that have only eaten chestnut acorns for their entire lives, and then we'd stop someplace else and have the Spanish make an incredible, simple dish. They have these great tomatoes, and they take a small piece of crusty bread and they rub the tomato across the bread and it soaks in, and then they top it with olive oil. It's amazing. It's fabulous.
So, I mean, just so I'm getting this clear, that's your favorite food there, or is there a different favorite food?
No, I'd probably go, if there was one Spanish food, it would be jamón ibérico. But there's such a range of available food, and it's a culinary culture that exploits that in a wonderful way, because they do have the tradition of tapas, which is small plates eaten generally late in the afternoon, because in Spain dinner is still late at night. And from olives to cheeses to seafood, it's a wonderful country gastronomically, and it's also not one that most Americans think of. Where are you going to go? Well, I'm going to go to Italy. I'm going to go to France. Hey, those are great. Go to Spain.
So Spain's the place to be if you want some good food, is what I'm hearing.
Look, all of Europe's the place to be if you want good food. But I have a particular fondness for
I'm definitely gonna put that on my list because I love food. Like, I mean, I guess I'm guilty of uh, the American diet, but I'll just consume as much food as possible. And in a
Yeah, but
way,
you're a thin guy, so you can get away with it. I'm not. I have to watch it.
yeah, and I don't know. It's you kind of just got to look at it, but I one of my life goals is I kind of want to like just travel the world, and I mean,
Well, I must tell you, I ended up traveling Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. I didn't do Asia except for one private trip. But I traveled Europe, Africa, and the Middle East relatively extensively, never expecting that that would be part of my life. When NBC called me up one day in the Chicago bureau and said, "What would you think of moving to England?" It had just never occurred to me. And in retrospect, unless you can't really appreciate so much of the world or understand so much about politics unless you've spent time elsewhere. It's the simple fact that things as basic as everyday devices that were invented here and invented there can be different. Your toilet can be a different shape. I mean, the fact is, people solve problems in different ways, and thus, and they see things in different ways. It's extremely important to spend time someplace else.
yeah, I think if anything, everyone needs to get outside the U.S. at least once because I mean, I think we kind of get stuck in our little uh bubble almost because I mean, we're only 300 million people. I mean, I know that's kind of a little bit of an understatement, but uh there's 7.5 billion people out there. There's cultures that like China or whatever has a billion, India has a billion people, the Middle East, Africa, I think that goes to another billion right there. And I mean, in a way, with we wouldn't have food if we didn't have those people to actually create it. And why would you stick to a place where only 300 million people are influencing that type of food? So
No, it's important to see the rest of the world.
yeah. So I mean, I've liked the thoughts that you've given me today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So I mean, kind of as we're wrapping up here, what do
Yeah, but
you
wait,
want
wait,
the
wait, wait,
odd?
wait, wait. Before we wrap up, plug my book, Food Americana. It's the story of how we created an American cuisine out of the foods of other cultures and countries. You can get it at Amazon or any place else that you go for books. Okay, that brief commercial interruption is over. Continue.
Well, we're all good then. I was ready to let you do that. So I mean, what do you want the audience to remember about you.
I
What?
want the audience to remember that it is a crime not to eat good food made by human beings with their own hands who care. So, after the pandemic crippled the independent restaurant industry, please, if you ever have the opportunity, go eat at a restaurant owned by the people behind the counter.
Thank you for that. That is definitely some wise words, and I definitely will be using that. And it's a life goal of mine. I'll definitely get out and try some new things and support those independent restaurants. So, if the what was the book called again? You can kind of just let people.
Food Americana.
All right, and you can find that on Audible, and you can get it on
You can
Amazon.
find it anywhere. Amazon.com, Walmart.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Audible's got the audio book. You can buy it. You can buy a physical book. You can buy an ebook. I promise you'll enjoy the read.
All right, sweet. So everyone, that is David Page. As you can tell, he has very intelligent things to say.
Thank you.
And be sure to tune in to next week's episode. We have a great guest lined up for that. And we'll see you guys next week. And let's get after it. Hey everyone, if you liked this episode and would like to hear more, be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button. We release a new episode every Wednesday for you guys to listen to. Thank you guys so much for the support that you give. We could not have done this without you guys. If you would like to be a potential guest on the show, check out intelligentconvos.com, and there should be a form there for you guys to fill out. Thank you guys again, and let's get after it.